Hello and welcome back to one more of my videos. We finally had our Man Reads Book videos, and I spent the last about hour kind of fiercely writing down my notes from what is apparently in our new Seraphon book. So we finally got to look at the whole picture. We have points, we have abilities, we have relics, we have spells, we have everything. So I'm just going to go over what I was hearing. I was watching the Guerrilla Gaming video, very great video. I suggest you check it out. He actually goes through both the rules and the new War Scrolls. If you watched my previous video, I actually went through the War Scrolls in a whole other thing because everything changed, and that was like a 2-hour video all by itself. So hopefully this one will be shorter. And we'll do some funny screenshots and pictures of my poor colorblind Slan's Seraphon while we talk about it. So, I got most of the rules down. I got most of the names for things, but sometimes I didn't quite get the name of it, and it was hard to read. So let's get started. So basically, for the allegiances, more or less, it's what we thought, with just some clarifications. So you must be either Starborn or Coalesce. So there's no not being either. You must be one or the other. And but both get the Contemplate the Old Ones. We've seen this before. That was the end of the hero phase. You replace a spell that this land knows. With all the abilities, you may or may not be doing that a whole lot, but we'll see. And then you get Sacred Asterisms as well, whether you're Starborn or Coalesced. This one was nerfed a bit than what I was expecting, but it makes sense within the context of AOS to like the rules that we currently have. So at the start of your hero phase, you pick which one's active until the next hero phase, so you can tailor what you want. And if you can be Hunter Steed, which means that everyone gets +1 to run and charge. That one's great. That one was revealed. And two we hadn't seen. One is the Great Drake. You pick a hero and you add one to their attack characteristics. That one's pretty great. And then the other one's the Wizard's Staff, is that you pick a wizard and you add one to all their casting stuff. So they're unbinding, they're dispelling, until the next hero phase. That one's also fantastic. There's so many ways to get +1 to all your wizards and stuff. So it's a good ability. Sacred Asterisms is good. Now if you're Coalesced, we knew most of the things, but there was a clarification on a big one. So Cold-Blooded is the ignore bravery modifiers, which is good because everyone's going to be skinks or bravery 5 in a coalesced army. So any modifiers there would be death. You have Predatory Fighter, add 1 to jaw attacks, which is fantastic for some units. It's just good all around. You have Scaly Skin, which is subtract 1 damage attacks, which is also fantastic. And the one that was clarified was the Primeval Domain. So they actually specify that you only ignore the negative effects of the terrain features from the core rulebook. So Arcane and the terrifying terrain and stuff. My local game store, we never play with those rules. We just kind of say if you're in cover, you get +1 to save, and because it's so much to remember already. So I guess more people need to play that terrain rules. But yeah, so you ignore the negative ones and you allow the positive effects. So if you are next to Arcane, then you still get the +1 from Arcane. But you are not -1 bravery if you're next to a terrifying terrain piece. So not as good as I thought, but I mean, that's fine. It would have been kind of douchey if the whole Coalesce could just be like, oh, Sylvaneth Woods, we don't care. That's not very good game design, so it's fine. Then you have the Starborn. They are Bravery 10, as we know. They can teleport at the end of the movement phase. And Celestial Conjuration, they're summoning. This was actually clarified. It wasn't as nerfed as I thought, but it's still pretty nerfed. So you get D3 summoning points for having a Slann or Starseer General. You get D3 summoning points for an Astrolith. And then they actually do say that for every Slann or Starseer, they can reduce their spell count by 1 to get D3 for each. So it's not for each spell, it's for each Slann or Starseer. So if you have 3 Slanns, for example, you wouldn't do that, but say if you did, then you get 3d3 if you gave up one of their each of their first spells. So it's not as limiting as you are only doing at most 3d3 summoning points, but you're going to be wanting to bring Star Seers if you're going to go for a summoning list. And the summoning is basically the same. You're still within 12, outside of 9 of the enemy, of Slans or Astralists, but the Oracle, the Trogodon, has been added to the list that you can summon out of. It's definitely more similar to everyone else's summoning, more or less. Like the Beast of Chaos is what comes to mind, because the roll is random as opposed to before it was straight 3. I wish it was straight 3. It's more control, but eh. And the table actually got more things. The points moved around, so some things got more expensive, some things got less. So like 10 skinks is still 6, so many points, and then there's a ton of things that are 10 points. So 5 Chameleon Skinks, 1 Razor Dawn Hunting Pack, 1 Ripidactyl Chief, 3 Ripidactyl Riders, 1 Salamander Hunting Pack, 1 Source Eternity Warden, 5 Source Guard, 5 Source Knights, 1 Source Old Blood, 1 Source Scarvet on Cold One, 10 Source Warriors, 1 Skink Priest, 1 Pterodon Chief, and 3 Pterodon Riders. All those are 10 points to summon. Then you have the 15-point tier. That is 3 Croxagores, 1 Astrolith, 1 Source Sunblood, and 1 Skink Star Priest, and 1 Skink Star Seer. All those are 15. Some of those, like I said, some of it's cheaper, some of it's actually more expensive. Then you have the 20 tier. There's actually 1 Bastiladon, that is cheaper, and 1 Source Scarvet on Carnosaur, and 20 Source Warriors. That's the 20 tier. Then you have the 25 tier, which is the Old Blood on Carnosaur, the Skink Oracle on Trogodon, and a regular Stegodon. And finally, the 30 tier is an Engine of the Gods or a Stegodon and Skink Chief. With Skink Chief, excuse me. I think some of I think the engine and the Stegodon with the Skink Chief is just way too much for what they are. If they were the 25 tier, maybe if you were going for the summoning army and just going all out. But with the clarification, because it did say in the rules that it's for each. For each of those units, you give up the first spell and you get D3 for each. So it's not, if you have just any amount of those, it's just the 1d3 and 1 spell, it's for each. So summoning isn't dead, but it definitely got stabbed in a back alley and kind of is being rushed to the hospital right now. So we'll see. And there are no relics or abilities to actually boost this, other than 1 Mega Battalion, but unless you're playing a 4,000 point game, then you're not playing a Mega Battalion. So that's Starborn and that's Coalesced. So let's go to command traits. These are the generic ones. Oh, and by the way, with the Coalesced and Starborn, if you're Coalesced, you can be Thunder Lizard or Coatl's Claw. If you're Starborn, you can be Dracothian Tail or Fangs of Sotek. But you don't have to be, which is nice. I think everyone's going to, as every sub-faction ever introduced has done, you're going to be one of them anyway. Starborn, I could see you wanting to not be either. You could probably make a list work. But I think if you're Coalesced, you're going to be probably Thunder Lizard or Coatl's Claw. The bonuses are just too good. So, anyway, so 2 command traits, the generic ones. Fairly similar to the General's Handbook. We have 3 for each of our hero types. But given our rules, you're probably going to have a Slan General. Even if you're Coalesced, you're probably going to have a Slan General. You might not. You might have a Saurus, but if you're Starborn, you're almost certainly going to have one. So anyways, the Slan, their 3 are Arcane Might. You reroll 1 spell effect per hero phase. So you can reroll a casting, you can roll a dispel, or you can reroll a deny. And you can reroll the spell cast or dispel in your hero phase, since it's a per hero phase thing. So you get like 1 reroll. Really good. That's what it was before. Vast Intellect, you get to know one additional spell from the Celestial Dominion, so you get another one too if you want one to keep, and then your other one is just kind of the recycled one that it's for whatever situation you're in. And the Great Remember, how the Mighty have fallen in this case, because now it's just you roll a dice on a 4+, you get a command point. I think it's still a really good command ability. You might see that a lot still, but it's definitely not the double teleport. There is no double teleport. There's no way to double teleport, at least as far as throughout the game. There are effects that let you kind of mass teleport or set up another unit within a different kind of functional teleport, but it's not that throughout the whole game you get two. Throughout the whole game you only get one. So get ready for that. Which I think is fine that one teleport was powerful enough. And for general traits in general, like now I'm actually interested in picking all three of these, as opposed to before where it was like, well, I'd like to do Arcane Might or Vast Intellect, but Great Remember was so good with the double teleport that it was like, well, you're never picking anything else. So they finally balanced it by getting rid of the best option. Take that how you will. Sauruses, theirs are basically the same with one slight improvement. So you have Disciplined Fury, you're rerolling ones to hit in melee. Thickly Scaled Hide, you're rerolling save rolls of one. And the Mighty War Leader is on a 4+, you get a command point, which was improved from a 5+ before. So you'll see lots of ways to generate command points, and it's really useful. Skinks, their general traits, Master of Star Rituals. You add one to casting if that skink is a wizard, if he takes this trait. And if you're not a wizard, you can use the Herald of the Old Ones ability without command points. And the Herald of the Old Ones was on the skink priest, yes. And that was the one that you pick a skink wholly within 18 until the next hero phase. You add one to hit rolls for the attacks made by that unit. So it's a simple +1 to hit. But the other bonus is that you actually don't use a command point when you do that. So you can put that on the Stegadon Chief, and it gets another command ability it can use for free. That gives it +1 to hit, and other things +1 to hit. So it's pretty good. Then you have Nimble, which is +1 movement, +1 save. It did not specify that you couldn't take this on something without a mount, because before it did say that. This is just really good, especially if you have a Skink Chief, because now it's at a 3+ save Stegadon. That's an additional movement, and there's other ways to make that Stegadon actually even harder to hit. If it's fighting an elite unit of 5 or less, it's actually a 2+ save Stegadon. So, yeah. And I'm just kind of going back and double checking that. Yeah, Nimble. It doesn't have a mount restriction. So, totally put it on a Skink Chief. It is actually rather an interesting idea. So, come on, video. There we go. Sorry, I'm clicking all the wrong buttons. And then finally, Cunning is the last Skink general ability. Start a combat phase, you can pick an enemy hero within 3 inches of it, and on a 4+, make him suffer T3 mortal wounds. They stab him in the back, essentially. Nowhere near as interesting as the other two, and it's also going to be hard to pick generals out of, picking Sauruses or the Slan. If you're going to a full Skink army and you do a Skink Chief as a leader, being Nimble or Master of Star Rituals is a good command trait. So I can see, if you wanted to go down that route, them being good. Artifacts. So you actually have lots of new artifacts here. Some old, some new, some reworked. But the Slan actually gets 6 that he can choose from. You can't. There's no global pool that you pull from. Slans get their own pool to pull from. Saurus get their own, and the Skinks get their own. Slans get 6. Saurus gets 3. Skinks get 3. So the Slans, the Zoatic Dial. So you secretly pick a battle round, and at the start of that battle round, you restore all the wounds to that Slan and reroll his save rolls. So it's essentially a slightly different version, guarantee version of incandescent electricities. So I imagine people are going to pick turns 2 or 3 to have this go into effect. If you're going to put your Slan in danger, maybe pick turn 2. If you're going to have him more further back and protected, maybe turn 3. So that way you can just heal everything. But if everyone gets wise to kind of your style with that, then they might just ignore you until after the turn this affects, and then nothing ever happens. But you do get the benefit of your rerolling your save rolls that turn as well. So if you haven't taken any damage, then it's not the end of the world. Then you have the Light of Dracothian, which is essentially the same with slightly buffed. You automatically dispel or unbind something within 15, and it's one use, but you can actually unbind or dispel an endless spell for free with this, which is actually really nice. Then you have Prism of Amtiok, and once per battle, at the start of any phase, within 12 inches, you pick an enemy, you roll a dice, they suffer mortal wounds in relation to that dice roll. So if you roll a 1, 1 mortal, 2 to 5 is D3, on a 6 is D6 mortals. I'm never a big fan of these kinds of one-use only that do damage. It just seems so limiting. But then you have the Itsy Grubs. I misspelled that. It's Grubs. Change that. This one's really good. You heal a wound at the start of hero phase, every hero phase of your hero phase every phase, and then you reroll 1 casting or dispelling and 1 unbinding roll. So you get the command trait for this relic, and you're healing a turn. I think that one's probably one of the best ones here, but it gets better. Then you get the Plaque of Dominion. So in your hero phase, you pick an enemy hero within 12 invisible, and they fight at the end of combat. And if it's also a wizard, then they subtract 1 from all the spell stuff that they do. So that one's really good. Just to make a big, scary, combat-y hero fight last. Gotrek, if you're facing Gotrek, yeah, but it's hard to go over the Itsy Grubs, but we'll have to see. And then it goes downhill from there, because Throne of the Lost Gods is you add 1 in the movement and moves characteristic, he gets a special chair. Big deal. I don't really like that. It's a battle between the Itsy Grubs, the Plague of Dominion, the Light Dracothian, and the Zoetic Dial. Throne of the Lost Gods and Prism of Amtiok kind of are at the bottom of that barrel. Then you have the Saurus Relics. They have 3. You have Blade of Realities. You improve the Rend by 1. And if you're fighting a hero, you add 1 to the damage. That one is fantastic. Especially if you put it on the Old Blood. Because then his spear is 3 to hit, 3 to wound, 3 attacks, -2 Rend, 4 damage against heroes. That's a lot of damage on a hero. And if it's a small hero, you're basically deleting them. If it's a medium to large size hero, you're just taking chunks. And that's before even the Carnosaur attacks. So, yes, please. Then you have the Size of the Private Hunter, I believe is what this was named. It was hard to hear the guy when he talked about this one on that name. But each time the bear fights and after your attacks, you roll a dice and you make mortal wounds. So if it's a 1, nothing happens. 2 to 5 is 1 mortal wound, and 6 is D3 mortals. I'm not the biggest fan of this, especially compared to Blade of Realities. Yeah, it's a mortal, but it's very small mortal. And there are ways, like from the King Star Priest with the Serpent Staff, to do just a lot more potential mortals. So then you have Blood Rage Pendant, where if you are half health or lower, you get +1 attacks for your melee stuff. That one is alright, but being half health though, keep in mind, if you're on a mount, the riders stuff, which is, since this is artifacts, this only affects the riders. That stuff never degrades, so having +1 attack at half health while the dinosaur itself is getting worse, but the rider on top stays in the fight and kind of gets a boost. This could be good on an Old Blood because his spear attacks are 3 damage a swing, and they're scary, so I still might go with Blade of Realities, but Blood Rage it's alright. The Skink, if you give them relics, they have incandescent electricities. It's the old incandescent electricities. Nothing more to say. Was just the added clause of after you heal your wounds, it negates the rest of the damage that was coming your way within that pool. So um, that one's good. It's what everyone took before. The Cloak of Feathers, though, is a -1 to hit and +1 to move and can fly. So it's like the Grith Feather Charm and the fiery cloak thing that everyone loves to take right now. Wrapped into one. That one is so good. Put that one on a Skink Stegodon Chief. That's also your Warlord. And you have a Stegodon that is -1 to hit with... how much do Stegodons move? I forget. You're right here. That moves 9 inches, moves 10 inches if it's a nimble general, with a 3-up save that can fly, which is just hilarious, by the way, a flying Stegodon. But then you get the Sacred Stegodon Helm, which is +1 to save and add 1 to damage for the melee weapon when you charge. But again, this only affects the bearer, and there's like no really good skink melee fighter. The best one is the Skink Chief on Stegodon, but now you're talking about for the charge turn, he does 2 damage with his little spear thing. I mean, I think the Cloak of Feathers is just way better on a Stegodon Chief. So then you have the Spell Lords and Endless Spells. We actually do get 2 Spell Lords, which is nice. And to talk about the Bound Endless Spells very fast, there are separate points values for our Bound Endless Spells. Basically, they're all 10 points more expensive. But the very important thing is that you can include them. You don't have to. So like Seraphon aren't limited to just the bound versions. You can take the regular versions for 10 points cheaper. And so that definitely helps some that it's some endless spells, like the Aether Void Pendulum, they only ever move one direction anyway. So you really don't need to control them as much, as well as like Balewind Vortex or the Chains. Some of them you just don't need to worry about moving, and you can focus on getting the bound on the spells for the Maws, the Purple Suns, the Geminids of Ulgish, the important stuff, which is fantastic. Then you have the Slan spell lore, which there are some bits that are familiar from the General's Handbook, some bits that actually been moved over to the Skink table. So if you are a Slan, you get one of these, and you can swap them out at any time at the end of hero phases. And so you get Celestial Apotheosis. It's a cast of a 5. You heal a wound to a friendly unit within 18, and you cause -1 bravery to enemies within 3 of it. If you cast of a 10+, you're healed D3 instead. But you're not resurrecting models. It's an okay spell. I wish it was more. I mean, it's a cheap cast, but it's not very impactful. There's a lot of healing in this book, though, so I guess this, on top of all the other healing, can just get kind of crazy healing going on. Then you have Walk Between Realms. It's a cast of a 6. You make the unit fly. You can do that by a command ability, too, so I don't know if you want to put that on a spell cast. Mystical Unforging, sadly, they did not reword this as I wished they would, because right now it's very limiting. So it's a cast of a 7, and you pick a hero within 12 with an artifact of power. They suffer D3 mortals, and on a 5-up, it destroys their artifacts. So it's exactly the same from before. I was hoping they would reword it. That way you could just pick a hero, make them suffer D3, and if they just so happen to have an artifact of power, then you roll a 5-up and destroy it. But so far, if you have an enemy hero, but they don't have some artifact of power on them, then you can't use this on them. Which I'm a little sad panda about. Then you have Celestial Equilibrium. I think this is the spell everyone's going to start off with on a Slam, because it's a cast of a 7, and you add 1 to the spell stuff that the friendly wizards, that the other wizards in your army are doing. So if you're bringing a lot of casters, this is fantastic, because then you just buff up what they're doing. Then you have Stellar Tempest. This one has been nerfed a bit. It's a cast of an 8, and you pick an enemy wholly within 24, and you roll a dice for each model on a 5 it's mortal. So It was the wholly within part. Used to be that you just had to be on the edge of 18, I think. Now you have to be wholly within 24. But also keep in mind that you can have Astrolith Bear that adds 6 inches to this, so now it's wholly within 30, and that's still rather large range. It's a really good ability. And then you have Dream Magic. Cast of a 9, and all endless spells that are not bound within 24 inches of the slant are dispelled. So, because you can swap out spells for the slan, if your enemy is bringing a ton of scary endless spells, you can just have your slan get in the middle of all of them, try and cast the 9. I mean, 9's a big cast, but there's so many pluses to cast in this book. And rerolls as well for slans. And you just turn them all off. You just unbind them all. And so, which is cool. It's situational, but cool. And it ignores your bound ones. So, but if you are bringing some that are not bound endless spells, it will dispel your own endless spells. So only the bound ones are exempt from this. So overall, the slant table is fine. I think Celestial Equilibrium and Stellar Tempest are the two that everyone will kind of bounce between. Then you have the Skink table, Celestial Manipulation table. So you start with Celestial Harmony. It's a cast of a 5. You pick a friendly unit wholly within 18 and they ignore Battle Shock. If you roll a 10 plus, then it's all units wholly within 18. So I think if you are Skink Heavy Army that is coalesced, you will take this spell. For sure. If you are Starborn, you probably won't take this. You might, but probably not. Just depends on your army. But coalesced, skink, heavy, yes, you will take that. Then you have Hand of Glory, cast of a 6, wholly within 18 on a friendly, and you reroll hit rolls of 1. This is a good spell now. Its value has gone up since we have lost the old Great Drake star constellation where everyone was rerolling 1s to hit anyway. Now, and I think, was it reroll hits of 1 for melee, or was it also ranged? If it's also ranged, then its value has definitely gone up. Friendly, wholly within. So it's just attack. So yeah, its value has gone up. So you can Hand of Glory them, and you can Hand of Glory bestow it on it. Now it's rerolling 1s to hit. It's good. And it's only cast with 6. Then you have Extend Astral Matrix. This is essentially the coalesced terrain ability. You cast with a 6. You pick a terrain wholly within 18. Everything is wholly is visible. You have to be visible, by the way, too. Sorry. And you do I only benefit from the good main rulebook terrain feature rules, and I ignore all the bad ones. And also the enemy if they ignore the good ones and only take the bad stuff. So, meh. Like I said, my game store doesn't usually play with those rules. It's too much to remember. Then you have Fury Convocation, I think is the name of this. I might be wrong, but it's a cast of a 7. Pick an enemy unit within 18 invisible, and then at the end of each of those phases until your next hero phase, they take D3 mortals on a dice roll of a 6. It's kind of a worse version of Mortal Contract for Mosiarch Bone Reapers because it doesn't last game long, and while it just happens, you don't have to like the Mortal Contract. You have to do damage to hurt themselves, but it's a roll of a 6. If it's the first turn, if you're taking the top of the turn, you can make them roll 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, I mean, you can make them roll a fair amount of times. I guess this spell ain't too bad. It's a nice little additional mortal wound thing. Bind endless spells, to go back to the previous one, Fury Convocation. And if your opponent double turns you, then that's even more turns that they're rolling the 6 up potentially to do D3 mortals. But again, you might never roll 6s ever, and he might roll 12 dice and not a 6, or he might roll 12 dice and all 12 are 6s. You never know. 6 is just really hard, especially with spending a cast on a skink, because all skinks are only like 1 casters. So, yeah, that's tough, especially with these other choices. Then you have Bind Endless Spell, cast of a 7, and can make an endless spell bound to you for a turn. So, which is hilarious. You can capture one of your opponent's spells, and I think this will only affect the malign sorcery spells, I fear. I don't think you can bind other faction-specific endless spells. That might be something they need to FAQ, but we'll see. Then you have Titus Serpents. This is the Skink's Stellar Tempest. It's a cast of an 8. You pick a unit within 12, not wholly within, just within 12, invisible, and you roll a number of dice equal to the model count and a 5 up's mortal wound. That one's fantastic, especially if you double team it with the Stellar Tempest. You can make the Horde armies cry. That one's a great one. Pardon me, just had to stretch a bit there. Then you have the Realm Shaper engine. So we saw the War Scroll yesterday, but we finally saw how you place this thing. And it's actually just as easy to place, quote-unquote, as the Osiric Bone Reaper one. You place it before all other terrain and outside of 6 of objectives and 6 of a battlefield edge. Which is interesting. The Osiric Bone Reaper one, you can put right in the middle of the table and not care. The Realm Shaper one you can put in the middle too, but you might actually want to put it in your territory, because I think the rules for garrisoning are that as long as it's in your territory, you can garrison within it. So let me see. I had it up. Pardon me on this. Let's see. Garrisons. Nope, it's after that page, I think. Yes. So, a unit can set up a garrison at the start of a battle if the terrain features wholly within the unit's territory. So, yeah. That's interesting. So, because most missions have territories larger than your deployment zone, if you just put this right at the edge of inside your territory, can you just garrison units ahead of the rest of the army? Rules is written. I say you could. And I don't think nothing stops you. So, just to get that extra little push forward. But yeah, the Realm Shaper engine, very easy to place down. Unless you're going to a tournament, in which case it's another big giant terrain piece that tournament organizers are going to have to be worried about, because technically it goes down before all terrain. So even though they have these nice pre-set up tables created, they're going to have to move things around when a Seraphon imagine a Seraphon and an Osiric Bone Reapers go face each other. That's going to happen, and it's like, well, now we got these two massive buildings to put on. Yeah, it's going to be a nightmare. Now we're into the sub-factions. So the Starborn ones, you have Dracothian's Tail and Fangs of Sotek. Please keep in mind you don't have to be these things. You can be. Dracothian's Tail lets you set up half the army in reserve, and then you bring them down within outside of 9 of the enemy and wholly within 18 of a slan. And if they're not there after turn 4, they're killed. And when you send them up, you have to set up a unit on the battlefield first. So for every 1 unit on the battlefield, you get 1 army in reserve. Which is it's a fantastic ability. I'm definitely leaning towards it if I'm going Starborn armies. But you get a command trait, Ancient Knowledge, I believe is what it was known, and you get to know an additional spell from the Slan table, and you re-roll 1 of your spell stuff per hero phase. So it's essentially the relic, one of the relics, and it's 2 of the command traits rolled into 1. That's what it is. And that you have to take that if you're Dracothian's Tail. And then you have the God Beast Pendants, and the first time the bear is slain, you roll a 4 up, and he just gets all the wounds back and ignores the rest of the wounds negated. So it's a slightly worse Incandescent Rituicities from before, because it's a 4 up now instead of a 3 up. But you have to take it. I am tempted to actually give this to like an Old Blood Carnosaur, so that way he charges in, and it's a ton of damage, and in half the time he just comes back anyway after being dealt with. So, yeah, they're good. It's good. Jacothian's Tail does not have its own command ability. Or, excuse me, no, yeah, command ability. That's all it has for Jacothian's Tail. Then you have the Fangs of Sotek. This is the one that adds 3 inches to skink movement in the first turn. So if you're taking tons of Ripperdactyls and Pterodons, they're moving 15 inches and 19 inches respectively in the first turn, which is rather huge. The command ability that you must take, or well, that you have an option to. Sorry, command ability and command traits. Why did they name them so? The command ability is Parting Shrouds, I believe is what the name was. But it's at the end of the enemy charge phase. And you pick a unit wholly within 18. And that skink unit can shoot. And then you roll a dice on a 4 up, they can move to retreat away. And a unit can only benefit from that only once. So the skink runaway is available if you take Fangs of Sotek, and it happens half the time. So... but it also affects, you can make a Bastildon shoot and then run away from combat. You can make your Stegodons fire and run away. It's a really good command ability if you're going to go that Skink Heavy Army. Skink Heavy Armies are still a thing. Most certainly, Saurus Heavy Armies will also be a thing. Don't panic, but Skinks aren't going anywhere. But interestingly, for the Fangs of Sotek, they have a Saurus-specific command trait, which is you roll a dice on a 3 up, you get a command point. So that's the best roll out of everything. That's roll and get command points, at least in terms of the value you need to roll. So if you're taking, sorry, a skink general, then you don't need to worry about taking this, and you can take one of the generic ones, which is fine. Then you have the Relic, the Serpent God Dagger that you have to take first. You pick a melee weapon. If the enemy suffers wounds from that melee weapon but doesn't die, you roll a dice, and on a 5 up, they're dead. They're dead, Jim. That one is absolutely hilarious. Skink, Chief on Stegodon, that'd be a good one to do. I don't know if was it specifically wounds suffered from that particular melee weapon, or just wounds suffered, period, from the unit. Let me see if I can try and read that. It's really hard to... Nah, I can't read that. So that might have to be a clarification that when you get the hands on the book yourself to double check. But that's hilarious, But keep in mind, go check if any insta-kill weapon ability targets enemy just suffers D3 mortals. But Nagash, 5 up, you're dead. You're a big KO balloon ship. 5 up, you're dead. It's hilarious. Just slit the throat of everyone in sight. Those were the two, and those are 2 Starborn, by the way. So you're getting your teleport, you're getting your summoning. Now we're into the coalesced ones. So Coatl's Claw is the first one. You add 1 to hit rolls for Saurus units when they charge, which is really good. Their command ability is at a start of combat, you pick a Saurus unit within 24. I think it's wholly within 24. It might just be within 24. I didn't get that bit. But they count as having charged, which is actually really good, because not only do you activate your add 1 to hit rolls, but there's a lot of weapons and abilities that activate on the charge as well. So like Saurus Knights, for example, when they charge, their spears go up in damage. And so you can just activate that again the turn after they've charged. So really good command ability for them. The command trait is you roll a dice for each command ability that the general commands to sources. And on a 4 up, you gain the point back. So you half the time can do command abilities for free. Again, really good. especially with how command heavy Saurus have been in the past and have continued to be, and now will be in the future. And the relic you must take is the Eviscerating Blade, and when you hit on an unmodified 6, you deal 2 mortals in addition to normal damage. That is a pretty nice pretty nice relic. It's not, especially since you have to take it. But put it on like a Scarvet on Carnosaur with his 6 spear attacks, and watch him do some mortals. It's nice. Then you finally have the Thunder Lizards. I'm personally drawn to the Thunder Lizards. I love Monster Mash armies. I play Tyranids. Monster Mash is my favorite. But Thunder Lizards add 2 to wound characteristics for monsters, which is really good. And now with the bonuses to all the War Scrolls, so you have 12 wound Bastiladons, 12 wound Stegodons, 14 wound Engines of the Gods, 14 wound Carnosaurs. It's just crazy. And the command ability, we actually revealed this before. It's at the end of the shooting phase. You pick a Bastiladon or an Engine of the Gods, wholly within 24, and you get to shoot twice with the gear it has. If it has a solar engine, if it's Bastiladon, or if it's the Engine of the Gods, it's the Engine of the Gods. It's a really nice command ability, and each unit can only benefit once. But say you have 2 Bastiladons, you can make them both fire twice, so your opponent's taking 4 Bastiladon shots, which now have they have set attacks, so that's 18 shots. That's 36 Bastiladon shots. It's pretty good. Then you have the command trait. You add 1 to the attack characteristic of the bearer's mount. So this is actually really good. If you're a Carnosaur rider, then all of a sudden you have 3 paw attacks and 4 jaw attacks. Actually, you get 5 jaw attacks because this is coalesced, so you get additional jaw attack too. That actually can be that can get scary because jaw attacks are now 5 damage at pop. Ooh. And then Fusel of Conflagration. Someone described this as a plasma gun, and it's like, yep, this is literally a plasma gun. And apparently Seraphon have a ballista skill of 4. You pick an enemy within 12. You roll a dice. On a 1, the artifact explodes. But on a 2 or 3, nothing happens. On a 4 or 5, you make them suffer D3 mortals. On a 6, it's D6 mortals. You have to take it, so I guess. Sorry, I got a message from something. So now we're in the final stage, the battalions. And I do have the points cost for the battalions. So interestingly enough, they actually made the Starborn and the Coalesced have essentially identical battalions, but ever so slightly different. So like the rules are different, but the organization's the same, and then the points costs are actually different. I am a little torn on the fact that the points costs are different, but it is what it is. And from a video yesterday, I was telling people that I was hoping for the Eternal Star Host to be back, and it was kind of back in name, but it's not a Star Host for Guard anymore. The Guard battalion is gone, so my 60 Temple Guard are very saddened right now. I'll probably never field all 60 of them, at least for the duration of this book. So let's talk about these battalions. So the Coalesced, and oh, by the way, in each one, Coalesced and Starborn, they all have their Mega Battalion that is like 4,000 points, but I'm not going to talk about those. They're not really worth talking about. No one ever is going to play them. So, we'll talk about the Coalesced versions first. So you have, everything is essentially named the same, except if you're Coalesced, you're from a temple. If you're a Starborn, it's a Star Host. But everything's like Sunclaw, Fireland, Shadow Strike, Thunderquake. So when you see the points and you're kind of confused on the difference, if it's a temple Sunclaw, then it is Coalesced. If it is the Sunclaw Star Host, then it is Starborn. So the Sunclaw is Sunblood or Old Blood and 3 source units, and you improve the Jaw Rend by 1. Again, I'll remind everyone this is the Coalesced versions. This battalion is Sunclaw. 140 points. I think it's pretty good, especially when any battalion that fills out your battle line is a pretty good one, and this is exactly what this one does. Just reduces the drops of your army. Really fantastic. It's up there in points, but improving your jaw rend by 1, especially for Coalesce because you have extra jaw attacks, is pretty good. Then you have the Firelance Temple. They take a Scarvet, which is either the Coal 1 Scarvet or the Carnosaur Scarvet, and 3 Source Knights units. You add 3 to run and charge if they're wholly within 18 inches of their Scarvet. Again, fantastic because it fills out your battle line. And Source Knights in Coalesced have 7 attacks per dude. So that is pretty scary, and you're just helping them get into combat easier. You can actually get adding 4 inches to run and charge if you have the Hunter's Steed up. So that one's pretty good. The Firelance is 160 points, so again, that's expensive. Then you have the Shadow Strike Temple. You pick 1 Star Priest or regular Skink Priest. You get 1 unit of Pterodons or Ripperdactyls, and you get 2 Skinks or 2 Chameleon Skink units. So, and what that one allows you to do is you pick 1 enemy unit that is visible to the priest, just visible. And that's either the priest or Star Priest. And you add 1 to hit roll. Everyone adds 1 to hit rolls against that target. So, really good. Especially if you have big mass of like Ripperdactyls or something, they charge in, and now they're +1 to hit from the battalion itself, and then they can add more attacks if you add a Ripperdactyl Chief on top of that. The Shadow Strike is 150 points. So we'll see how that fits in. Then you have the Thunderquake Temple. It's an Engine of the Gods or Stegodon Chief. You either take Troxigors or a hunting pack of your choice, and you get 2 Bastillodons or Stegodons. So fairly similar organizations as before. In your hero phase, you declare if you're either Swift or Savage. If you are Swift, you get to run and shoot or charge, which is pretty nice to be mobile. Or if you're Stegodons, to really get in and charge. Or you can be Savage, where you're adding 1 to the tax characteristic for the battalion. And if I heard right, there's no range limit, so you can be anywhere on the board and get the bonus. But I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Now on the other side of the coin, the Starborn coin, and if you've been playing Seraphon before, these abilities might sound familiar. That essentially what happened was that they split each battalion in 2, and because before, all our battalions had a ton of rules, and now essentially Coalesce and Starborn get half of what our old battalions used to be. It's not the end of the world. Actually, most of these I am planning on, I think, would take. In fact, I would almost take all of them in some circumstance, which is a pretty good thing because most current armies, their battalions aren't that good except for like 1 or 2. So let's talk about the Starborn one. So, like I said, the names are the same. The only difference is the word Star Host, and all the organization is the same, but I will go over it just in case. So if you're Sunclaw Star Host, it's Sunblood or Old Blood and 3 Source Warrior units. But for this one, you actually improve their Celestite weapons rend by 1. I almost prefer that, because if you take clubs, now you're -2 rend on your Sauruses, which is terrifying. And the Star Host, for Sunclaw is, it looks like 160 points. Give me 1 second. Come on. Someone was calling me, but the points are on my phone. I can call you back. Come on. There we go. Yep, 160 points. So I think most of the Starborn battalions are more expensive, which I'm a little sad about. I like Starborn playstyle, but I think one of them's cheaper. Compared to the Temple Sunclaw, it is 20 points more expensive to be Starborn Sunclaw. Fireland Star hosts, this is the Scar Vent and 3 Source Knights. If you wound on a 6, you're dealing a mortal wound in addition to everyone within this battalion. That is good, but keep in mind your Source Knights now go from 7 attacks each to 5 because you don't have the extra jaw attacks anymore. But you are, if you're lucky with those 6 rolls, you get mortals. The Fire Lance Star Host is what looks to be 160 points, so that's actually the same points cost as the Temple version. Then you have the Shadow Strike Star Host. This is the one Sking Priest, Star Priest or Sking Priest. You have one Pterodon or Ripperdactyl, and you have 2 Skinks or 2 Chameleon Skink units. And this one actually selects, you're allowed to select 1 unit and let them come down 9 inches away from the opponent. So, like I said, everything has been split in 2. So the Shadow Strike used to do both. Now, if you're Starborn, you get the teleport thing. If you are Coalesced, you get the +1 to hit thing, which just falls in line with the lore and the play styles for both. So now you can get your big old squad of Ripperdactyls 9 inches away. There's no... I mean, it used to be 3 inches, but come on, guys. That was never staying, ever. I was expecting this. So, the Shadow Strike Star Host is 170 points, so it is 20 points more expensive. But this is a second teleport, essentially, for 1 turn. So, and you don't necessarily have to make it the Pterodons or the Ripperdactyls. It can be any one of the units. So you can put your Star Priest forward for... I don't know why you would do that, but you can. And the Thunderquake Star Host, this is the Engine of the Gods or Stegodon Chief. This is the Croxigor or Hunting Pack. And 2 Bastiladons or Stegodons. And in the Star Host, in your hero phase, you heal 1 wound. And if you're wholly within 12 of a slan, I think it was the wording, that seems pretty close. But if you're only within 12 of a slan, then you heal D3 instead. So once again, split in 2. And the Thunderquake Star Host is, I think are you that one or are you that one? I'm sorry, everybody. I believe it is the, let me triple check. Sorry, it's in a Templo Estampida. Okay. The Star Host version is 130 points to do that, and the I never talked about the Temple version, the Coalesce version. That's 150 points. So it's actually cheaper to run Thunderquake in Starborn than it is in Coalesce, which is interesting. I mean, I guess that makes sense because Coalesce you can have, if you're taking a Thunderquake, you're almost certainly the Thunder Lizards, so that way everyone's +2 wounds anyway. And then you can make them attack more. And yeah, so that's fine that the Coalesce version is more expensive because you get more benefit for taking them. Alright, that was everything. So now we've seen the War Scrolls, we've seen all the rules. What do I think? Change. And change is good. The playstyle that we currently have will probably have to be modified, and I think that is completely fine. In fact, preferred. If it was the exact same, then things would be boring. Some aspects are better. Our spellcasting is certainly a lot better than it was before, which is good. Our melee is a lot better. Our shooting, I think you can consider it more or less the same because a lot of things got just better, like easier to hit, easier to wound, and more damage on most things, but we have lost our rerolls to hit in a lot of cases. But again, this army is very, the word is synergy. Hashtag synergy. Everything relies on a lot of other things to give it boost, to give it just that little bit extra, to get scary. And there's a lot of bonuses to hit, to wound, well, to hit especially. To wound, there's a couple things. You get a lot of, there's a lot of ways to generate mortal wounds, and I think that's maybe where this list will, the army will go in terms of competitiveness. Just really rolling the weight of dice to cause mortals to things. Um, and I am interested to see where this all goes. I am. It's been so long. I'm really excited to change things up from my Seraphon, and I think I'll play both Coalesced and Starborn. I think. I mean, I have the entire collection more or less. Things like Chameleon Skinks I don't have, but I have every other model. Um, and I want to play both styles. I want to run tons of Saurus and be Coalesced, and I also want to still teleport around in shenaniganry. So I'm really happy with this result. I hope you all enjoy my video and my thoughts on the rules for this. And we'll see just how we shape up in terms of the meta and in terms of just having fun and playing at the game stores. I honestly don't see any downside to being pure Skink or being pure Saurus or a mix of the two. I think there are very fun play styles for both parties, so which is exciting. Thank you for listening if you stayed this whole time, and you all have a great day.